If you have ever written an executive summary or a narrative for your Tableau dashboard, then you know it can be really time consuming. With Tableau Data Stories, you can automatically generate narrative insights within your dashboards in few seconds, and it is customizable. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use data stories in Tableau, which was introduced in version 2022.2. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into it. Welcome back. This is Gurpreet from DataViz Canvas, and in today's tutorial, we are going to learn how to use data stories in Tableau, which was introduced in version 2022.2. So for this particular tutorial, I'm going to use Sample Superstore dataset and the default dashboard provided by Tableau for Sample Superstore dataset. So as you can see in this dashboard, we are showing sales by product category and also sales and profit by product names. And on the left hand side, we have all these objects. So data stories is one of these objects, which you can see here. And before we use data stories object and drag that into our dashboard, we need to make sure we are connected to Tableau Cloud or Tableau Server. So in this case, I am connected to Tableau Cloud. So why we need to connect to Tableau Cloud? Well, this is because whenever we need to write a data story, Tableau uses cloud-hosted service. And when you add a Tableau data story to the dashboard, Tableau sends the associated worksheet data to Tableau Cloud, which is in compliance with the security standards. So if you are interested to know more about the security standards and the policies on Tableau Cloud, then I will share the link in the description below and you can check that out. So once we are connected to Tableau Cloud, we will simply bring the data story object and drag it onto the dashboard wherever we need. So in this case, I will bring it here and leave it. Once we drag that data story object, you will see a pop-up window will appear. So that window is used for configuration of the data stories. And in order to configure a data story, there are three simple steps. The first one is to configure the views. Then the second step is to configure the fields. And the third step is to configure the data story. So in this particular dashboard, we have two different views, product details and product view. So if you are creating a dashboard for your work or something else, then you might have more than two worksheets. So in that case, you will see all those worksheets here and you can select the one you want the data stories for. So in this case, I will select product view and I will click on next. Then we will move to the next step, which is configuration of the fields. And in this case, you can drag and drop the fields to include in your story. So in this case, we have dimensions as month and category, and measure as profit and sales. And year of order date is not used, but if we want to include that, we can bring it into dimension. But in this case, story generation supports maximum of 2 dimensions, so we can't use it here, but we can bring that into measure. So if we want to bring another measure of year, we can do that. So I will remove that in this case. And then we will click on next and go to the next step, which is story. So in this case, we have to choose one of the best option which describe your data. So either it can be discrete, continuous, percentage of whole, or scatter plot. So when we are working with story, it is important to choose the right type of story for your data. You want to make sure that your story is telling you the information you need from your data or what is happening with your data. So out of these four types, we will choose one of them. But in this case, before I explain what each of these different story type is, let's see, like when I select discrete, your story changes. And when I select continuous, it changes as well. So in this case, continuous is the best fit. So what is a continuous data story? What is continuous, or why and when we use it? So well, continuous stories are best for analyzing trends and progression over time. So it is used when we are including content for performance or where there is a data volatility or we are showing different segments or even different trend lines. Then continuous story type is pretty good and the best fit. And as you can see here in this particular example, we have sales and profit measures, and we are showing the trend over time. So continuous is the best fit and is recommended by Tableau as well. And for continuous story type, we need to make sure our worksheet must have at least one dimension, and it should have measures between 1 to 10. Or it can have 2 dimensions and up to 3 measures. So in this example, when we were trying to drag year into dimension, it didn't let us do that because it said you should at max have 2 dimensions, but you can have 3 measures. Or you can have 1 dimension and you can have up to 10 measures. So that's where continuous story type is used. Now moving on to the discrete type. So discrete story types are best for comparing values and understanding the distribution of data in each value. So for example, you can use discrete stories when you want to understand the driving factor of the KPIs in your report, or if you want to understand the outliner quickly during the data discovery. So those kind of things where you are using your report where we are including the content and showing it about clustering across the data or about grouping, then discrete story type is quite useful. Then moving on to the third one, which is percentage of whole. So in this case, it's not visible to us, it's grayed out because our worksheet doesn't support that as of now. But this particular type of story type is used, or it is best for pie charts, where we are telling a story as a percentage of whole. And for that, we should have 1 dimension and 1 measure, which is required for creating a pie chart. Then moving on to the next one, which is scatter plot. So scatter plot stories are best used for understanding the relationship between 2 measures. So when you create a scatter plot story, it includes the content about the relationship between 2 measures. So that is quite useful and quite beneficial to use that kind of story if you are using scatterplot. And for that, you need to have 1 dimension and 2 or 3 measures to create that particular data stories. So in this case, we will select continuous and we will select done. Once we do that, you will see the data story is automatically created. And you can see here we are showing the summary by sum of profit by period and category, and as you scroll down you will see sum of sales by period and category, and we are showing the description or the narrative for top categories breakdown by furniture, office supply, and technology. And all of these blue highlighted values is basically a drill down. You can further drill down based on these blue categories. So for example, if I want to see the top category breakdown by furniture, and I know this is the summary view for furniture, and I want to drill down further, I will simply click on furniture and you will go 1 level down. In this case, you can see all the information about furniture, its sum of sales and sum of profit. So you can even drill down further into narration to get more insights from the data, which is available in the form of text. So now that we have created a data story, we need to understand how we can further configure or edit our Tableau data story so you can tailor your own need. So we can see at the top of this data story pane, we have settings, edit, copy, and reset. So let's start with the settings first. So when we click on the setting, a pop-up window will appear where we can further configure and edit our data story. So you will see here there are few different sections here: narrative, characteristics, analytics, driver, relationships, and display. So let's start by understanding the narrative. So narrative, it's quite interesting here because in this narrative we have the customization ability where we can change the verbosity. So by default it is selected as medium, but if we can change it to low, it will give us the information with less verbosity or less text. and you can change it to high as well, and you will see a lot of details here on this one. So we'll keep it low in this case. And also you can allow the business user by just clicking on that, and they can change the verbosity by themselves. So they will have that option at the top of this pane where they can change the settings. Then the interesting bit is drill downs. So it is recommended to set the maximum number of drill downs. So in this case, it is 3. So if we change it to, let's say, number 1, I will show you what I mean. So let's click save by doing 1, and I will get back onto this and change it to 3 and then see how it differs. So once I click save with 1 drill down, you will see it is updated. And when I click on this drill down, on this blue value, you will see it's only showing me the summary, and it's drilling out only for technology, not for furniture, not for office supplies. It's only drilling down to 1 level, right? So I go back, and now let's change the settings. Go to settings again, and now we will go to narrative and change it to, let's say, 3, and click save again. Once we do that, we will click on this particular setting again, and you will see we have technology, office supply, and furniture. All 3 is there. So that's the benefit of updating or changing the drill down settings. So you can adjust based on number of segments or number of values you have in your dimension, and you can increase or decrease this drill down value. Then going on to the dimension terms, so you can change the naming convention. So in this case, month is shown as period. So if we see here, it's showing the entities and across all 12 periods. We don't want periods. I want to change it to month as a singular value and months as a plural value. And then going on to the category, it is showing as entity. I don't want it entity. I want it as a category. So I will change it to category and plural to categories. And then with the measure value, it is showing as total sum of profit. Instead of that, I just want profit. And same with sales, I just want sales. So once I do that, it is updating our data story simultaneously. So you can see here, total profit was 292,000 across all 3 categories and across all 12 months. Looks much better. But if you see the sales number or the profit number, it is just showing as an integer value, but I want it to be a currency. So for that, we have to go to characteristics. And in that characteristic, you can configure the characteristic setting to give context to your data, where you can do a lot of formatting, and it will give you more insightful stories. So for example, in your story, you can specify if the context of this, like if we look at profit, it will let us know that if the value is in the form of number, percentage, or currency. So in this case, I want it to be a currency, so I will change that. And also, it will help us to specify the context. If higher the number, is it good, bad, or neutral? So for example, in some cases, we have higher number of customer complaints. So then higher the number is bad. But in terms of sales, if we have higher the number of sales, that means good. So that way you can set the context based on higher the number or higher the value. And also you can format a lot of decimal places, negative values, and all that stuff. And also you can set up the aggregation. So in this case, we have aggregated sum of profit, but you can change it to average based upon the data set you have. And same way, we will set up sum of sales as well as currency, and larger the number is good in terms of sales, and same with the profit, we will change it to good. More bigger the number, better it is. And then we click save. So once we click save, the pop-up window will close. So in this case, we will open it again by going to settings. So we have covered narrative, characteristics, and moving on to the next one is analytics. So analytics tab, it tells us, or it helps us to choose the analytics to write about in the story. and how and when those analytics are written about. So there are different types of analytics available depending upon the story type and how many dimensions and measures your story has. So based on that, so in this particular example, we have correlation, segment, trendline, and volatility. But based upon your chart type again, so there can be different ones. So let's look at each one of these. So let's start with correlation. So correlation one is really interesting. So we can use correlation to identify true statistical correlation between two different series. If you have more than two series, then the combination are analyzed for that correlation. So for example, what do we mean by that? So if we want to identify when those two products are purchased together, we need to use the correlation. Moving on to the next one is segments. So when do we use segments? Well, segments are used to highlight the changes to the data point within a series. So first of all, we have to set the minimum percentage of change that you want to write about in a segment. So let's say that change falls below your defined threshold that are written about. So for example, if you set your segment threshold for a change that is greater than, let's say, 50%, then your story doesn't write about a time series that features a 30% decrease, because we are trying to set that segment threshold that it should be greater than 60%. So after you have set the threshold, choose whether to apply formatting. So that you can do it here, like if you can change the threshold and say I want to set the changes threshold to be greater than 60%, then your story will not write through the time series which is featuring less than 30 to 50% decrease, and you can apply that. And same way, you can do it for the percentage change. We can keep it to 50% here as well, where you can say set the minimum percentage of change that you want to be formatted. Then moving on to the next one, which is the trend line. So trend lines are determined by how well they fit your data within the defined percentage of confidence. So we can set the minimum percentage, in this case, of confidence for trend lines. So we can do it between 95% or 97%, greater than 97%. And also we can set the minimum percentage of change that you want to be formatted. So all these are different settings which we can apply for these data stories. And for that, you need to really know your data well. And then the next one is volatility. So volatility, we use volatility to analyze standard deviation over time. So you can use volatility when you want your story to write about values that fall outside the average range of your data. So that's when you can use volatility. So once you have these settings done for analytics, let's move to the drivers. So in this case, you can see you have two drivers, dimension drivers and metrics driver. So let's say you have month-over-month sales, which has increased significantly. And we need to know what drove that increase in sales and what might have detracted from those increased sales. So we can use setting up the drivers to answer those questions. So basically, you can select the type of driver that has greater impact on your analysis. It can be count, individual percentage, or cumulative value. And again, we have an option to set the maximum contributor and maximum offsetters. And same way, we have metrics drivers, but in this particular worksheet, it is not configurable because we have to have multiple measures and one dimension. And in this particular scenario, I have more than one dimension. But once you have one dimension, this will not be grayed out anymore, and you can make changes in these settings. Then the next one is relationships. So relationship is used to select the measures that have relationship with other measures in your chart. So actual versus benchmark, or even you want to make sure you have current and most recent sales value with the previous period. So that thing you can configure. So once we have that set up, the next one is display. So this is again a bit on the formatting side where we can change the structure. Right now it is selected as a bullet points, but we can change it to paragraph, and your data story will change it into a paragraph. And also we can change the font size if we want it a bit bigger. And also we can format the good changes and bad changes. So in this case, we'll like to see good changes as green and bad changes as red. And that way you can see office supplies decreased over 2 consecutive months. So it highlights those bad changes, and your focus can directly go to those insights and you can take action accordingly. And also you can set up the dynamic ordering or condensed view where we will remove the extra spaces from around just to clean it up a bit. So once we do that, we will save that option. So now we have configured all of these settings. In this case, I will now go to the second option, which is edit, where we can edit these stories. So once we do that, you can actually add a note ahead of this story. So for example, I want to say show note, and I want to say Sample Superstore summary. And if I save that changes, you will see that note added at the top of the data story. So you can actually customize the data stories and add your own notes if you want, or even you can add your own custom items. So in this case, this pivoted breakdown, it's a note section. You can change here as well, and you can say, let's say testing in this case, and I can save that. So pivoted breakdown will change it to testing. So that way you can edit a lot of different things, a lot of text in this story. And you can also hide that if you don't want to show this particular section, you can hide that, or even the other section, you can hide that. Or if you want to see particular items within that summary and some of them you don't want to see, you can just click on these eye marks and it will hide or show those icons. So that way you can see here all of this long list is basically showing that. And you can hide and show all these values. Another really interesting point is you can add a custom item. So in this case, let's say I want to add a custom item. Here, it will create a custom item at the bottom. It will let you add it. So here I want to say, let's say, sales for, let's say, furniture. And I will go to these 3 dots and I can add a function. So here you can do all the customization. So in the function type, I want to see sum of sales, right? I will select sum, and I will select a selected dimension. I will select a category, and for that category, I want to see the sales. And which dimension I want? So we said furniture, so I will select furniture. And in both these cases, so this is an optional value if you want to see it for a particular month, but let's say I want to see it for all. So I will add to the section. And once I do that, you will see here sales for furniture, sums by category, sales, furniture, and all. So I have added all those values in that function, and I will save it. Once I save it, you will see that added here. Sum for furniture, 1.5 million. So that way you can add your own custom story or custom points where you can add different functions or you can add different calculations. So for example, if I want to, let's say, add a custom item to each category, right? So once I do that, you will see it here. And let's say testing in this case, and I go here, you can add a different condition. You can even set the context. You can add a context here, context name, set functions. You can do a lot more things here. So in this case, if I add another context, you can add multiple context, and that will be added for all of these different segment types. So that way it is quite handy and quite easy to customize, and you can add your own values, you can add your own text items, you can make changes, you can show and hide some of these, and simply save it and it will be updated in the story. So that way it is quite easy now to create an executive summary for your dashboard, and it is less time consuming, and you can present it to the senior management straight away, and it's quite intuitive, and you can make the changes on the fly. If you change particular filters, these particular narrative will be updated and showing only the values for that particular filter type. So in this case, for the central region, for East region, if you can see, total profit for East region is 94 grand, right? For South region, it is 46 grand. So it is quite dynamic, quite easy to use, quite helpful, and you can create different data stories for different sheet within one chart, one dashboard. I hope you guys enjoyed this session. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop me a message and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you. See you next time.